Hey guys, this is Ben Bolton with CG Tuts Plus, and today we are going to continue our knife creation series with part 2, the low poly model. So what we're going to do is, instead of creating an entirely new low poly model, say by modeling around the shapes we already have, we're just going to reverse engineer the high poly that we already have and degenerate the low poly model from that. So first of all, in order to preserve all the work we've already done with this high poly model, we're going to select everything and duplicate the entire thing. That'll give us a duplicate of our high poly model. We just want to go and hide that. So now we can go in here and we can start to take the turbo smooth off things and really create the low poly. So we're going to jump onto this blade, we're going to delete the turbo smooth, and then we're going to delete this little groove here because we don't need that modeled. We can just bake it in. That's why we made it in the high poly. So that leaves us with certainly less polygons, but definitely a rougher silhouette. And of course, we've got all these supporting edges not doing anything for us. So the first thing we ought to do is get rid of all those, which I'll just select one at a time. Select loop, remove, select loop, remove, and again and again and again. You definitely want to have hotkeys set up for select loop, ring, and remove for this step because we'll be doing a lot of it. Okay, that's pretty good. We've got a problem here. Of course, this is a very jagged edge right now. We want it to be maybe a bit more smooth. So we're going to jump into our side view. We still got symmetry on, by the way, so we only need to be worrying about this one side. The other will be taken care of automatically. We're just going to disperse these a little more evenly. This is really just the more, autistic side of things. When we were working on the high poly, we didn't have to worry about all of this quite so much, but with the low poly, it's important to keep in mind, polygon flow, making sure everything looks smooth, really keeping the silhouette of everything as good as possible with the minimum possible overhead, fewest used resources. Alright, I think this might look pretty good. Top should be basically alright. Oops, supporting edge from before. Alright, that's still a little jagged on the bottom there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to chamfer just the vertices, and then target weld them up to the parents there. And then this will let us smooth this out without adding too many and increasing the density too much up here. So maybe a more elegant solution than just throwing more edges on. And we'll make sure everything's in quads just for kicks. Alright, that's a pretty good silhouette right there. So now we're just going to smooth it and we'll be all set with the blade. Oh, but before we smooth it, we're going to have to collapse the symmetry. And the reason for that is that, let's say we're putting this part of the blade on smoothing group 1. If we had symmetry on, this part would also get symmetry 1, or smoothing group 1. And then they would smooth over each other and not look sharp at all and give us horrible errors, and we don't want that. So what we're going to do is just apply alternate smoothing groups to these, so 1 and 2 on top, and then 3 and 4 on the bottom. And that'll give us a nice sharp edge. If we were baking with object space normal maps, we wouldn't have to worry about smoothing groups at all. But because we're working with tangent space and we want to do this right, we are going to use smoothing groups, and later on we'll be breaking up the UV map along those groups. So just going to do some optimization here. Delete some faces and vertices we didn't need. Throw a smoothing group on there. And finally there. Alright, looking good. So, actually, I wonder, we might be able to smooth this out a bit. If we add that to it. Yeah, that works. Sort of. I think we'll leave it though. The normal map should take care of that alright. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. That's the blade. We can call that blade low and just hide it for cleanliness' sake. For the sake of cleanliness. Alright, this one won't be too tough. We're just going to go in here and start deleting anything that we can. Starting off with the most obvious supporting edges. But we gotta be careful it doesn't go and delete too much on us. Also going to go ahead and delete these two screws because we're not going to need them. And then just keep on deleting, oops, or removing I should say, not delete. Keep on removing these unnecessary edges. It's a pretty tedious process, but it's definitely faster in the long run than trying to make an entirely new low poly model just to fit the high poly. When we've already got such a good cage set up anyway for the high poly model that we can just reverse engineer it. Just gonna cap these off cleanly. Alright, that section's looking good. Now the nightmare. Might be easiest just to target weld all this. So we'll do that. Nice thing about supporting edges is that they always tend to collapse fairly easily. So this step actually tends to speed itself up. We're just kind of basically undoing a lot of the stuff we did in the last step. Although it's still pretty important to do the high poly first. I mean, looking at this, you might think, well, you could just you know, do the low poly first and then duplicate that and use it as the starting cage for the high poly. And you could do that. I've tried it. The main problem with that workflow though is that either your low poly or your high poly will probably end up lagging, because with the low poly, if you want to do it right with as few tries as possible, you're going to end up with, like, you know, triangles and stuff all over the place. You're not going to have these nice clean supporting loops around your circles or whatever. And because of that, your high poly will run into problems when you try to create supporting edges. So I tend to just do the high poly first. I find it to be much easier. This is definitely a more tedious step though than normal low poly modeling, like before we were using high poly models. You know, because really all we're doing here is just conforming to the high poly mesh as best we can with just less tries. So really, most of the thinking we do is already done in the high poly stage, so this is just kind of tedious. But definitely necessary. Actually, I don't really want to do this whole thing again, at least on camera, so I'm just going to pause it and do the exact same thing on the other side I've already done over here, and then we'll pick up there. Alright, we're back. I've cleaned up the backside, so we're all set to start smoothing this guy. Before smoothing anything, I always go make sure hit clear all with everything selected so that we don't accidentally run into any problems, but yeah, just a little bit of erratic information there. I'm going to put these both on the same smoothing group. Normally if this was just a normal low poly, we'd put them on different, but I'm going to put them on the same one just so we can keep them on the same UV island later, which will become apparent when we do it. Now let's smooth the front of this. I could probably use the other selection modes like circle, but I'm just not very used to it. It probably would be smart though for things like this. So put that on one. We might run into some smoothing problems up here, just because of all this weird geometry, but we'll be able to get around it if we do. And if we don't, super. So let's see. Let's see the damage. It's alright. There's a little bit of an error there. It might cause us problems, so let's see if this helps at all. Not really. Okay. I'll add a cut there just in case that does. Make sure everything's welded, because I didn't before. It is. Alright. So, yeah, there's a bit of an error there. I think we can live with that, though. It's not too big a deal. And if it proves to be worse than it looks, we can always come back and change it during the baking process. Not a big deal. Somehow this got deleted. Okay. Basically, when smoothing a low poly object that you're going to be baking, you want to keep anything that you'd want to be on one UV island, just a single UV island, has to all be the same smoothing group. So that's why we have to do this whole side as one. If we split it up right there on this part right here, which could be a hard edge, then we'd have to separate these two. And it's just for your own convenience. It's good to avoid that whenever possible. Okay. Now I'm not sure if I want to... Yeah, we'll put these on the same one. No reason not to. Yeah, that looks fine. Alright, so we get all those on one, and then I think we're all set with this guy. So, clip's done. I know I've called it like 5 different things, so we're just gonna call it the clip permanently. The clip LP. Or have I been using low? Yeah, I've been using low, so for convenience we'll go clip low. Alright, now we've only got 2 things left, and we'll save the most fun for last, so let's do this. First thing we're going to do, go to element select, select everything, deselect the main thing, get rid of it, and that'll clear all of our floating geometry. And now it's just a matter of getting rid of these supporting edges, which is actually just a matter of selecting everything in between, growing twice, and they're gone. Now for some connections, or bridges, I should say. Again, I'm doing my best to keep this part all quads. So Bear with me a bit. Sometimes you can get away with n-gons. Usually if a shape is convex, I don't have any second thoughts about leaving it as an n-gon for reasons I went over in the last tutorial. But a lot of people are very phobic of them, so just in case you're one of those people, we're going to make this all nice and quadrified. Quadrificated. We're going to make it out of quads. And triangles. Some triangles. But triangles aren't a big deal. Alright. We add symmetry on there. I think we'll get rid of the symmetry mod. Oops. Collapse, not delete. Get rid of the symmetry mod. Now we just have to smooth it. So select everything, clear all. I bet I could select this quicker from the top. That'll be 1. And that'll be 2. There we go, that's all set. That can go. And now we're just left with the grips. Now these are a more organic shape, which means we might be able to get away with just leaving them how they are. Because with organic stuff, it's not as important as it is with hard surface stuff. That you have, very specific hard edges and stuff, obviously. So if these match the contour well enough as low poly models, and it looks like they do, we might just be able to leave them pretty much the way they are. So we'll just delete the one supporting edge that we made. You remember it. And then unhide the thing I just hid without checking its name. Got it. Alright, let's name this now. Grip low is good. Make sure we're not wasting too many triangles off where we can't see them. And to do that, we'll just straighten these out. See how far over we have to go. And then copy and paste the coordinate. Alright. Alright, looks good. So, wood. Low. Alright. So, let's unhide all of our low poly stuff. Get a good look at the whole thing. Also going to check out the try count on this, see if we have to remove anything anywhere, if it seems exorbitant for what it is. 1,000 triangles. Of that, the grips are only 312. That's good. I was expecting more. Okay. Well, we've got some pretty good distribution here. I'm just going to correct some of the flow on this guy. But otherwise, we're in business to move on to the unwrapping and baking. So, let's see. Clear all. 1 and 2. Alright, there's our low poly model. It's free of any floating geometry. It's optimized, and it is ready to go. So I'll see you guys in the next lesson.